Dear participants of the 4th Congress of the Financiers of Kazakhstan, thank you for participating at this event. Allow me to congratulate you on the day of the Financier and the Independence Day, and to wish you great success. Now, since 2020, the beginning was given to the development of all microfinancial organizations, pawn shops, online lenders were all called microfinancial organizations, and agencies for regulating the financial market was managing them. And we've introduced qualification requirements and requirements to issuing loans have become harsher, and measures were taken on reducing the debt burden. And for the purposes of financial monitoring, for the credit bureau and credit histories, and these measures have helped increase the transparency of the market, prevent fraud, and to protect the consumers, and to reduce systemic risks and oust unfair participants from the market. It was a difficult period for MFIs, and the emergency situation and the lockdown have reformatted the work of microfinancial organizations from classic to online, and new technology was implemented, new channels of sales. The crediting and lending has been made more rapid. And in spite of all of these trends, what hasn't changed is the main mission of microfinancial institutions, which is to render financial services to starting entities on the market. And the President, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, has voiced the need to expand the potential of MFIs to fund small projects within the framework of the decree of the head of state, and to talk about the financial market in terms of expanding capabilities and implement new services and provide the access and to develop rural economies. And allow me to introduce our dear speakers, distinguished speakers today. Nurlan Abdrakhmanov, Deputy Chairperson, Agency of the Republic of Kazakhstan for Regulation and Development of the Financial Market. Raushan Kurbanaliyeva, Chairman of the Board at Arnur Credit. Ruslan Omarov, General Director of the First Credit Bureau. Almira Sagatova, Chairperson, Association of Credit Partnerships of the Agro-Industrial Complex, and Holger Wiefel, Regional Head SME Finance and Development Group, Central Asia and Mongolia, EBRD. So let me pass the floor to the Deputy Chairperson of the Agency of the Republic of Kazakhstan for Regulation and Development of the Financial Market, Mr. Nurlan Abdrakhmanov. Thank you very much for passing me the word, for giving me an opportunity to speak, and to tell you about the work that is being done by the agency, together with the market, on developing the microfinance market. Now, firstly, I'd like to do two things. The first one being to thank our organizers, the National Bank, for this event today. It is truly a great opportunity to live in this difficult time to discuss, to exchange opinions, and to think together about what are the prospects of the microfinancial industry. And second thing, I wanted to congratulate all of our colleagues, those who were here in the morning, who are here today, with on our professional holiday, and to wish you that the financial market is stable, competitive, and that microfinancing is also stable, and that it all help the well-being of our people. That's the main objective. And today, I'd like to convey to you about the measures that were done by the agency since it was created in 2020, and what are the prospects of regulation that we see for the future. Now, firstly, Over the past 2 years, large-scale transformations were done, and you've already mentioned those. And allow me to focus on them in more detail because each of those is an important stage in the development of the sector. Starting January 1st, 2020, we've implemented regulation of all subjects who provide employment in rural areas. So before we regulated microfinance organizations, and starting 2020, it's also online financial institutions and pawn shops. And that was done against the background of complaints, and there were facts of fraud and financial pyramids. We all know about those, and that is, of course, that wasn't very nice because many of our citizens suffered from the unfair actions of some participants. And in that regard, in the perimeter of regulation, we also now have pawn shops, the activity, fraudulent activity, which was identified with indicators of a financial pyramid. And in 2020, the agency, together with the Prosecutor General and the Ministry of Internal Affairs, took measures on doing reviews, and we've audited almost 1,000 organizations to detect illegal financial activity, so to identify financial pyramids. 1,348 entities were encompassed. We investigated them. Some of them weren't registered yet, but the activity, microfinancial activity, already had to be regulated, so we had the authority to check, and we identified the violations and took the measures, and they stopped their operation. Starting January of this year, by the decree of the President, licensing was put in place of microfinancial activity. Now, all entities of the financial market are deemed microfinancial organizations, and microfinancial organizations provide reports to the regulator and to the credit bureau. And in terms of pawn shops, we introduced additional technical requirements for them to more securely store the property that they're entrusted with. So if on the market we had 4,500 entities that did microfinancial activities, the license was only given to slightly over 1,000. Amongst them 600 pawn shops, and 3,500 entities that did not get the license, and we've already taken court decisions on halting their activity and their liquidation. And as of October 1, the MFI's overall portfolio is 1.3 trillion tenge, and 635 billion is the portfolio of MFIs, and 40% of their overall portfolio is credit partnerships. Now, the quality of the MFIs is quite good, and it does not trigger any concern with us, or NPL 90 plus 6.7%, and with the credit partnerships, even less, 1.2%. So the microfinancial organizations play a big role in the development of micro and small business. They provide financial support, especially to the regions. And we now have here with us Almira Sagatova, the head of the Association of Credit Partnerships, and she can in more detail tell us about how these credit partnerships work in rural areas. But I'd like to say that MFIs do play a big role. If we look at the numbers, then roughly, I already said that roughly overall half of all the portfolio of MFIs is lending physical entities and businesses for business projects. So half of the portfolio is to develop micro and small businesses. And you already mentioned that in his message, the President gave the order that we need to develop the potential, the capacity of MFIs to credit small and micro business especially in rural areas, which is in our main focus now, which is what we're really focused on. And our agency identified 3 key tasks that are of top priority. First is to expand sources of funding. We all know that to further develop business and make it accessible, we need new resources, and we need that to increase potential and to reduce the rates. And we're seeing now that for the MFIs, the main funding are loans from banks or non-financial institutions. And loans, of course, the cost would be higher if it's a loan. And in the classical understanding, a loan demands collateral. So these are difficult instruments. They are available, but they're pretty expensive. And so we need alternatives. And there are no real alternatives for MFIs. They're limited. Of course, there's own capital, but that's only 30%. 70% are borrowed resources. And also undeveloped is the mechanism of funding using issuing securities. Only 11 MFIs have issued securities on the Kazakhstani Stock Exchange. That's an additional source, and MFIs use it. But out of the overall 1,200 MFIs, only 11 have done an issuance. And we believe that's an effective instrument.
In the structure of funding credit partnership, 63% is debt financing, the source of which is agrarian corporations, and 37 is the own funds. I would like to note here that agrarian loan corporation, its mandate is not to provide main source for loans, but their assets are limited. Last year, the resources that provided by them 110 billion tenge. So here we need additional sources as well. To expand funding, credit partnerships and MFIs, we provide for the following measures. First of all, the agency, Ms. Abulkasimova today said that together with the state bodies are considering creation of an APEX organization. It's a structure that is above microcredit organizations, so it has to attract resources and redistribute these resources for future funding of entrepreneurs. Here we looked attentively at the international experience. Such projects have been implemented in India, Argentina, South African Republic, and Kyrgyzstan. The APEX organizations contributed to improving employment, reducing poverty, etc. So APEX can attract accessible funds not only by traditional debt, but also by placement of debt instruments. Second is for attracting funding at stock exchange. We will simplify listing requirements at CASI. So there will be a separate platform. There will be conditions, a green corridor using which MFI can enter the market, the stock market. So to do that, we will increase leverage from 7 to 10. And one more thing, I have addressed leverage. Leverage is the limit that an MFI can attract. It depends on the capital. So how to increase capitalization? For capitalization, we support the supply of the market. So if it's long-term security, it is a subordinated debt. You can include such instruments into the capital. This increases leverage. The second objective, create conditions for scaling large MFI by transforming large MFIs into banks. This already was mentioned today by my boss. Here we have a high level of readiness. We have the legislative amendments. We coordinated them with the market and with the national bodies. So we have high readiness here. Why do we need it? It is needed to make sure that financial services become more accessible for rural area or for regional entrepreneurs. So large cities and towns are well covered with financial services. Now we need to cover the rural areas, and this provides this opportunity by converting microfinancial organizations into banks. Now this process is not regulated. To have a banking license, and an MFI has to meet all technical requirements. So this requires a certain break in the operational activity of MFI. So, and that's why we developed the amendments. Now, the third objective is to optimize regulatory burden of the taking into account the risks and operations. We discussed it quite extensively, and we have a common understanding. Today, at microfinancing market, there are lots of entities depending on their operations. There are classical credit partnerships and pawn shops. They all have their own business profile. If there is a certain commonality between credit partnerships and MFIs in terms of lending, we also have pawn shops whose activities are different. So as further members, we will implement a proportionate regulation. So this is regulation based on the type of risk and operations. So if the organization, if the entity does not pose high risk or for the consumer or for the system, they will enjoy more liberal conditions. But for the larger ones, they will keep the regime that exists today. These are the main activities that we are planning to implement. We will continue working together with the market. We will continue cooperation with the association of MFI and credit partnerships. So in coordination with them, we will discuss what further regulatory changes are needed. Thank you, Nurlan Almasovich. Indeed, looking historically, the development of MFIs, what we had before and what we have today, is quite different. We have had some significant changes thanks to the work of the Agency for Regulation and Development. We think this market should be more trusted by the public. Thank you for your remarks. The next remarks are by Raushan Kurbanaliyeva. She is a representative of a regional MFI which specializes on SME lending in providing loans to agri-businesses. And Raushan will analyze the market trends and will also address the lessons learned from the pandemic. Thank you for the floor. Let me start. 2020-2021 for microfinancing was quite challenging, as well as for the financial system of Kazakhstan as a whole. What challenges were there? The state of emergency is one of them due to the COVID pandemic and various quarantine restrictions which had its impact on business. Such challenges as transforming MFIs due to transition from offline to online. This trend was already in place, and the quarantine restrictions accelerated this process. the acceleration process of digitization of microfinancing lending. So there emerged new mobile sale channels. This all took place in 2020, 2021, with the consequences for the whole business. So we strongly felt the increase in competition, and we also saw transformation of business models and strategies of MFI development. MFIs transformed, they became larger, they expanded, they took very limited niches. So there was overall an adaptation to the new environment. So during this pandemic, we observed a trend towards the growth of MFI's loan portfolio. So what's the reason? What's the cause? I'll give you an example of our company. In 2021, some companies became listed. This was also an adaptation to the new environment where MFIs had to look for new funding sources. And as our president said in his message to the people of Kazakhstan, MFIs working on the spots. They know the clients and their business. And this was very clear from the example of Arnur credit, how our company, how it transformed, what new products were adopted, what new channels, service channels were opened. So throughout this sector, what took place in the period? Mergers. So first driven by competition reasons, but also some increase in control by AFR. In March 2020, there was introduced licensing for MFIs. This, on the one hand, improved transparency, and conditions became more equal for microfinance entities. Also, the companies that could not meet these requirements, they had to go out of the market. Also, there was a trend of increase in share of MFIs in lending to SMEs, and these are the MFI general trends. And so we can look at it from our example. Our company is in the market for more than 20 years, and it has come the whole way. Back in the day, it was just microcredit organizations. Then the government introduced the register, and back then several companies also, MFIs, were eliminated as well. The third stage is licensing, and our company has been through all of these stages. The mission of Arnur Credit is to improve the quality of life for the economically active population of South Kazakhstan by providing microfinance services within 20 years, and it was very well seen in 2020 and 2021. This was very well seen. Where are we present? We are present in 4 oblasts of South Kazakhstan: Turkestan Oblast, Kızılorda Oblast, Zhambyl Oblast, and the city of Almaty and Almaty Oblast. The company's portfolio, unfortunately, there is no. Oh, do we have it? Just very briefly, the company's loan portfolio is over 20 billion tenge, and the MFI sector was impacted by quarantine when in March there was small downturn, and in third and fourth quarters we had big downturns, and already in 2021 the company was able to restructure its business processes and implement new products, and we showed growth in 2021 and exceeded 20 billion level. If we look at the customers of the client, these are clients of a classical MFI. More than 50% are agri-businesses, the clients that received loans for developing animal farming and plant farming. This is also caused by the fact that southern Kazakhstan, especially Turkestan Oblast, it has a lot of small businesses that take loans for agricultural goals. 40% are business clients. This could be rural area clients, but who do infrastructure. If we look at clients in terms of rural and cities, 90% are rural and 43% are women. So this diagram shows that the majority, how our clients are regionally distributed. So what allowed our company to keep operating during major restrictions? First of all, it is support by strategic partners. So first of all, the Damu Foundation, with which we have been working very closely for a long time, and in 2020 we were given good credits which allowed our customers to choose products and to determine the price of the loan. For example, of course it is the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Asian Development Bank, and other international lenders. Also, Arnur Credit has a social rating score BB from international rating, Microfinance rating. So we are committed to protection of our customers. So more specifically about it, May 2020, following regulator's decree March 20 on support of SMEs, 50% of restructuring, we provided 30% of restructuring, and this is quite big volume. Our loans are quite small, so we had to do a lot of work. And today we can say that out of this 50%, 92% have already recovered their business and are receiving service within their standard schedule. 8% are the clients who have been heavily hit by the restrictions. In 2020, for example, they talked a lot about the cabbage in Sare Agash county. They were not able to export cabbage out of the country. A lot of our customers suffered. So we looked at each client individually. We provided support to those who were able to justify. So we provided them additional financial support. We restructured their schedules, and we think that this allowed recovering business to our clients. During the quarantine, we stopped doing work on our distressed debts. So in this area, we started to work with Damu on reduced interest loans. With portfolio quality, it is seen here that for MFI sector, the risk portfolio 30 is relevant. For reporting, we use 90, and in 2020 it increased by 20%. And later on, the portfolio quality shows improvement. And most importantly, there are trends on transforming business strategies. How did it happen with Arnur Credit? We had 3 areas: clients, business processes, and our staff. What did we do? We implemented rapid loans that do not require presence or just require minimum documents. We used our historical data, scoring systems, and we simplified significantly loan consideration. So what else did we do? As part of cooperating with EBRD, we developed a program of mentorship for, we called it Big Cash, for female entrepreneurs. And what we did there, we provided training, and this took place in early 2020 offline, and we also did it online in late 2020 and 2021 for our female entrepreneurs. It was very interesting. We familiarized with them with very basic things like Zoom, and we used outsourced trainers and our own trainers, and this yielded. So this eliminated the psychological aspect to it, because our clients were no longer face to face with their burden, so we kind of updated all communication channels, and in 2021 we wrote a lot of scripts for call center, for our website, for WhatsApp. We used WhatsApp groups, so we engaged as many channels with our clients as possible. We expanded our cooperation with the terminal company. And our clients were able to pay their loans through terminals, and so this will be one of the channels for servicing clients. And there will be a personal cabinet or personal room for each client, where they will see their balance, etc. 2020 made us accelerate, and we chose the program of loan collaterals. And this program allowed us to automate our internal process, and we improved it, and we are very proud of this product. So we improved our system for considering our agri clients, and we have the Arnur agri application for 17 crops like cotton, melons, watermelons, cabbage, onions. So the client comes, for example, he has 3 hectares of land, and he says, I need so and so much. We look at the yield, and we see the automated decision. And this was launched during the pandemic, and this allowed our customers not to miss opportunities during the start of the season. And at further stages, we started to hold our meetings only online. We have lots of branches, Jarkent, Kızılorda, lots of remote areas. We gathered all of them in Shymkent, and now we do it remotely. And we are now introducing an electronic document control system. What was done with regard to staff? We made a special focus on training, and whereas previously our focus was on the analysis of the client and on the analysis of the client's business, we trained our loan experts to analyze. But in 20 and early 2021, we started training our staff on the ethical behavior in client service. So our focus was not to drive the client into the loan burden, but to calculate the correct volume of funding needed by the client. Sometimes the client comes and says, I need 2 million. Why? Because your products are up to 2 million. And after our joint calculation, and this calculation shows that the client needs not 2 million, but 1,300,000. So we can talk a lot about it, but my moderator says we can stop. We need to stop. There are other participants.
Yes, thank you very much. I think your experience that in the period of the pandemic shock was used also in other microfinancial institutions which are socially oriented. Thank you for your speech. Now the next topic we've got, it relates to new strategies on the microfinancing market, transformations of services and products, new points of digitization, competition with the fintech segment and financial systems. Now, if you allow me, I will talk about the main trends about this. Now, the sector of microfinancing is in the process of transformation. It's looking for new approaches and strategies. And in the last 5 years, it's actively moving towards fintech. In the microfinancial sector, we believe the most change happens because the microfinancial sector, microfinancial organizations are in contact with the borrower. They feel how the borrower feels, and it reflects the whole situation that goes on within SME. So we're more mobile and flexible in transforming our business model, and we can face the customer's needs. And if before MFIs used to work mostly in the segment of entrepreneur loans, then now we're ready to give the customer a more broad spectrum of services, consumer loans, and our level of competence is growing. It's growing in risk management, and MFIs are developing with the clients in other directions as well. Starting 2020, as we already mentioned, the new stage began in the development of MFIs. All organizations were put in one sector, and we've demonstrated in the environment that how we adapt to the environment. So it was like the new regulation coincided with the pandemic shock and the lockdown measures. But I think that the microfinancial institutions really stood the test, and apart from that, showed steady growth. And many microfinancial institutions, as was already said, have intensified their work on going listing on the stock exchange, have grown their credit portfolio, and this means that the microfinancial sector still has the potential. It needs to be expanded, but we need to expand it in terms of lending to SMEs, especially in rural areas. Once again, I'd like to note that these results and achievements would not be possible without a favorable regulatory environment. And the pandemic has uncovered all the vulnerable points in the weaknesses, but we believe that crises are also opportunities, and that's allowed us to look anew at our business strategies and our business model. And it became obvious that the inevitable process of digitization of financial products and remote channels of service is a need that determines the position of MFIs on the credit market, lending market, within high competition. And we're seeing an expansion of cooperation of MFIs with payment organizations, second-tier banks, service companies, financial ecosystems that offer technological and digital solutions. For instance, MFIs started more actively implementing their procedures and services on electronic document exchange, where we've made issuance of loans more rapid and increased the quality of underwriting using software. And many large fintech companies are implementing mobile apps that allow to get access to the customers' turnover from their business activity to incentivize the discovery of these businesses. Now, if they use these apps, then they get these extra rates, and that incentivizes them to be more transparent so that they can do all of this tax accounting also in the app. And we believe that microfinancial institutions are also carrying out a very important government role on increasing the transparency of SMEs, and we're ready to continue that further. But overall, the pandemic has changed the requests of customers. There is demand now for other services that MFIs can provide. For instance, they're interested in factoring, selling e-money, and there's already factoring cases, but new growth points for MFIs are providing new capabilities and functions. We're currently talking about giving MFIs the function of payment organizations with the authority to issue microcredits and electronic money to electronic wallets, with the analogy of how social assistance is being paid out currently. And so we hope that for MFIs, this option will be available in the future. And finally, I'd like to say that in spite of the business approaches changing and the software is being updated and made more modern, when transforming the business model, implementing new strategy, we need to not forget about the main mission and the goal of microfinancing, which is the social impact, incentivizing entrepreneurship, and improving the well-being of the population. That is what all organizations should strive for. Thank you very much. And so, next up, I'd like to pass the floor to Ms. Sagatova, the representative of the credit partnerships, who's going to tell us about financial inclusivity and how the development of rural economy is taking place. Thank you very much. Now, finances are funds for any economy is the fuel, and depending on how many people are involved in the system and how it works, how the economy works will depend on that. And according to the World Bank, about 1.7 billion people in the world don't have access to finance. So that means they can't open an account, they don't have access to cheap loans, and they are forced to go to the informal market and use cash. And that carries financial and legal risks for them because their money can be stolen by pyramids or fraudsters. You can steal money and money becomes devalued. And in terms of financial involvement, it helps people and businesses plan the future in long-term investments. It helps them plan some unexpected expenses, helps them invest in education, their own health, improve their quality of life. And for business, especially rural business, access to funding is critical. And the higher the level of financial inclusivity in the countries, the more successful the economy. And the highest share is in Switzerland, 98%. And this means that there's more money in circulation, there's less shadow economy, there's more competition between financial institutions, which makes the market healthier, and it helps combat corruption. Now, if we speak of Kazakhstan, we do have this gap between the cities of Nur-Sultan, Almaty, and the other region, but thanks to the ubiquitousness of mobile internet, people can get access to cash transfers, deposits, and other things, and this accessibility is growing in Kazakhstan, which we can't say about accessibility of loans. And here, our microfinancial organizations and credit partnerships can be those new heroes who can really elevate the accessibility of funding in rural areas. So in terms of credit partnerships, 94% of the total number of credit partnerships is funding agricultural business in rural areas. And we've been doing that for 20 years now. We've been doing that successfully. We can judge by the NPL that Nurlan mentioned. It's never been above 3%, but it's even lower now. And throughout all the years of funding, throughout all the 20 years, we've issued over 62,000 loans, which is 536 billion tenge. And apart from that, We can also understand why they're focused on agricultural businesses, because their main funding institute is the Agrarian Credit Organization. And not so long ago, the Agrarian Credit Corporation, through credit partnerships, was implementing a program of funding non-agricultural business in rural areas. So small cafes, pharmacies, services, and that program was really in demand. There were many people involved. It was successfully implemented in spite of the fact that the rates on that program were higher than the agricultural business loans. And thus, we can say that any business that's being funded and credited in the rural gives a multiplicative effect, because you have less unemployment, you have more employed individuals, and the entrepreneur not only solves their issues, but also they retain the people in that village. And so that's why our microfinancial institutions and our credit partnerships, they can cover the three elements of financial inclusion. First, it's financial literacy, because the partnerships are interested in the correct structuring of the deal. They always consult their customers on how to fund, how to best use that money. And second thing is protection of the consumer's rights, because credit partnerships are being regulated nowadays, and mostly that regulation is aimed at socializing microfinancing. So the rights of the borrowers are well protected. There is a threshold for the interest rate. All the issues are handled with the problem loans. So the rights are protected of the borrower. And the third thing is the accessibility. The credit partnerships are in 98% of all the districts, and they're physically accessible. And just to draw a conclusion, I'd like to say that to involve the rural population, to increase the involvement of rural population into the financial circulation, which is important for the government and the state, we need to use the network of credit partnerships, because they have 20 years of experience. They possess a trained team of staff, streamlined business processes, legal documents. They have these buildings that they own or they rent, and a license to provide microfinancial services. So we need to take advantage of that, leverage that network, and solve the issue of financing. And the basic thing for financial accessibility will be provided to every citizen of the district. Thank you. Thank you, Almira. I do agree with the fact that credit partnerships, just like microfinancial institutions, can be the main drivers for the policy of expanding the employment of population and developing SMEs. And so we are expressing our preparedness to move in that direction. Thank you for your speech. And next up, we'd like to pass the floor to Holger Wiefel, the Regional Director of the SME Support Group of the EBRD. Please, Holger. Thank you, Erbol, for passing me the floor. Thanks to the organizers for the organization and for the invitation. This year we can meet in real life, and it's great. And what's especially great is that we have a panel session for microfinancing in Kazakhstan, which I think is very important. And I'd like to emphasize the importance of this sector for the economy of Kazakhstan, for the population of Kazakhstan, and as Almira just said, the access to finance, the access to financial services of Kazakhstanis. And the EBRD has been working for 30 years with the SME sector in more than 30 developing economies of the world, such as Turkey, Bulgaria, Croatia, Moldova, Ukraine, Egypt, where I just finished my 3 years of work, Mongolia, Tunisia, and also Central Asia, including Kazakhstan. And our bank welcomes the new strategy of development of the market of microfinancing in Kazakhstan, which will foster, we're sure, the further development of the financial sector, one of the most important sources of funding for financing for SME customers in the country, especially in the regions of the country. And we've already heard that digitization, I think that's a word that's popular with everyone, and of course using models of education for capacity building for staff of MFIs and for entrepreneurs is very important. We know that digitization is growing rapidly and developing, but it does not solve every issue. The development of skills of the MFIs themselves and of the end borrowers will still be one of the factors of success for the development of the sector. And the sector of microfinancing in Kazakhstan needs ongoing education and learning with a focus on the real life flows and the ability of the borrowers to repay the loans, and not just collateral-based loans, or what we're seeing right now in terms of digitization, including third-party sources of information to assess the solvency of the borrowers. So the EBRD is prepared to help in developing the skills of the MFI staff, including through the RSPP platform, education platform, regional small business program, which the bank has launched. And in 2018, this is not only a virtual platform anymore, which of course still exists, and it was meant that way, but it's also training for MFI staff. And of course, there is an opportunity for learning for entrepreneurs. And Raushan already mentioned that, and I'm really grateful not only for the cooperation, but also for the very positive effect that we've been able to achieve with your help. And of course, we are prepared to continue the support of such initiatives. But that's not all. We do hear today also that the financing is a challenge. And we, as the EBRD, we believe that if the microfinance remains commercial, there is a chance that we can securitize the SME portfolio and we can refinance the microfinancial organizations. Initially, of course, that will take place with the help of the government. Initially, this is with the help of the international financial institutions. And in the midterm and in the long term, these should be with the support of the market players. So we recommend a commercial approach to refinancing and not subsidizing microfinancial organizations. The risk remains, the currency problem remains a risk for MFIs as well. And we, as the EBRD, are saying that we cannot do without the support of the state or quasi-state institutions, and that is why support is welcome, so that we don't expose microfinancial institutions to currency risks, and we cannot let that happen. And
we also recommend avoiding subsidizing MFIs, and we suggest that you subsidize the end borrowers. For example, it includes subsidizing through interest rates or through return of borrowed funds, provided certain conditions are met. And this will be my next point that I would like to talk about today. These are new products in the area of green economy, for example, and in inclusivity. Raushan has addressed expansively regions, about agriculture and how you can successfully train, and Almira has also shared her experiences. I don't want to talk a lot about the green economy. My colleague Tanya Tio is next door, already talking about green economy and about how we can help to improve the situation in Kazakhstan. But I would like to briefly focus on inclusivity and equality and what we can do and what we can offer to the regulators and also to the MFIs and to banking institutions. To develop this area, financial regulator can use the following instruments to improve gender equality in microfinance and in financial sector as well. And I will list several points that we consider would be very useful for Kazakhstan. And we consider organizing, collecting data on SMEs with gender breakdown, and our partners understand it sectorally. This would be quite good, including because, as I have said, about refinancing MFI, and the world trend is toward this. The data gender segregation is very relevant. This will simplify access to refinancing, gender assessment of the finance sector. This is a sectoral task or objective that we need to be involved in. Support and preparation of national report on gender financing, implementation of national training certification program like gender analysis for banks and MFIs, and the national assessment of the gender diversity for financial institutions like MFI, and first of all for MFI because we consider that it is these institutions that are considered the drivers and more responsible as far as gender equality is concerned, green economy, inclusivity, and they're more dynamical moving towards this goal. So gender breakdown sectorally, so organizational gender assessment, support of gender strategy, of course, and in the institutes as well, implementing gender vulnerability program for institutions, implementing program Become the Best Employer for Women. And we did this in Turkey, and we were quite successful. The results were very stunning. And implement EDGE certification, economic dividends for gender equality. I would like to note the majority of MFI clients are women entrepreneurs. Raushan has said that about 43 or 45 or 50% are entrepreneur women's, and there was a lot of achievement. We provided about 21,000 loans under this program We trained 650 staff, and this also includes consulting services, mentoring, on and offline events, training events, not only for staff, but as Raushan has also said, for the borrowers as well. The bank is willing to provide its support in the further through political dialogue, including with the regulator, with the development institutions like DAMU, to develop and improve financial institutions. And thank you very much. Thank you, Holger. We are very glad to have close cooperation with EBRD. This is an evidence to the fact that a market is more trusted by international partners and financial institutions. Now, the next floor goes to Ruslan Omarov, Director General of the First Credit Bureau, who will address the role of the Credit Bureau in expanding the lending to the borrowers. Good afternoon. Thank you for this floor, because all the remarks were very long, and we don't have much time left. And all of my 214 slides, I don't think I need to show them all. I will just focus on the main things. They work on the spots, they know the clients, their business, and their capabilities. So this was mentioned in all of the panels. They mentioned that the president paid his attention to specific attention to MFI, and this is right. MFIs should be helped working with business in rural areas. Before I start with the main things, I would like to talk about some figures that characterize the MFI market. We are saying that these figures of MFI market without credit partnerships and without pawn shops, the classical ones. And on 1st October, the loan portfolio was 635 billion, and the portfolio is steadily growing. If we look at regions, 30% of all portfolio is Almaty and Almaty region. The lowest indicator is for North Kazakhstan Oblast. Turkestan is also one of the leaders in terms of loan portfolio. 2/3 of portfolio accounts for physical persons. The physical persons portfolio has grown by 41% in 9 months, still 188 billion tenge. So in all quarters, we see a growth on the loan portfolio for individuals or physical persons. Here we see what regions are most in demand, so have the highest demand in terms of loans. So here as well, Almaty Oblast and Turkestan Oblast, so who lead in terms of the portfolio growth and the number of active contracts. The lowest indicators is for North Kazakhstan Oblast. They work mostly with second-tier banks or credit partnerships. Lending quality, as mentioned by Nurlan and others, the quality of portfolio for my MFI is quite low, so it's quite stable. In October, it is 6.8%. the volume of loan portfolio of legal entities. So it's not very big, about 19 billion, but it is growing. We can say that SMEs are adding to their portfolio with MFIs. The main areas for business loans, turnover, and investment. So it's about 20% is towards turnover and investment in fixed assets, and 80% is for other purposes, which we unfortunately cannot determine. Here we are again showing that business lending accounts mostly for that Nur-Sultan and Akmola Oblast takes the biggest share for business credits, and in terms of active contracts, Almaty is the leader. In terms of the quality of portfolio for legal entities, it's one of the lowest 2.8%. As I have said before, it was noted by Nurlan, the quality is quite good for MFI sector. And in terms of to sum it up on statistics, I would like to say that the growth of portfolio is mostly due to lending to individual persons. For 5 quarters, we have been seeing steady growth with 2.2-fold growth. So as a credit bureau, what can we offer the business? Not only MFI, but also for financial organizations that lend. We say that if you want a clear analytics, we can always approach us. It is analytics online, so that you have clear understanding where you are, where the market is developing or not. I would also like to address trends that we see in MFI sector. We see there are 6 trends, and at this panel and at other panels they have been discussed. First is seamless transformation of MFIs to banks. This is the innovation that was proposed by the agency. This is quite useful, and now our big MFIs can, if needed, become a second-tier bank and receive expanded opportunities for working with their clients. Technology and data, what Raushan talked about today, working with big data, automation, digitization, etc., etc. We noted that in 2020 there have been a lot of changes in MFI sector. So the fact that classical companies used to work in the classical pattern that was more close to the banking lending, this changed overnight, and everybody understood that they needed to automate and digitize all of their processes to be competitive in the market. New product lines, we understand that the market requires more products, better products. So accordingly, we are confident that MFIs will change in this respect as well. Also, factoring and leasing are things that are unnoticed, not only by MFIs but also by other credit or loan organizations. Regulatory zeroing, this is what Erbol mentioned. We need to approach it a little bit differently. We need to look at MFIs a little differently. We need to give them more functions and opportunities. For example, payment organizations, cash services, etc. I think this is the agency is ready for that. They will support some initiatives and they will not support others. proportionate regulation, what was same as addressed by Nurlan and chair of agency. So, and regulation should be proportional to risk, directly proportional to risk. There was an initiative when 3 sectors were united under OMFD. So I think there should be some internal separation of MFI because MFIs and credit partnerships are similar in terms of functions, but pawn shops could be singled out, or they could, or different regulation could be applied to pawn shops. Securitization is maybe one of the problems with the financial market. It is funding. We understand that this initiative on securitization of portfolio should be implemented, maybe with the help of an agency, other players of RCB, so that they do benchmarks on securitization, which was already which was also addressed by Ms. Belkasimova. Now there is an understanding that the agent creates supports the creation of an Apex fund foundation, in particular for MFIs and credit partnerships. Credit partnerships have the biggest challenge with access to money. As what we say about SMEs and MFI, we say that we can easily help in terms of making decisions, and we can provide, as Raushan has noted, and I thank you very much, we provide scoring cards for SMEs, so information about cash turnover and participation in state procurement. One of the challenges that is still to be addressed by MFIs, it is transition to IFRS 9 starting 1st January 2022. They have to move to IFRS 9. This is not very simple, but given our expert experience, we are ready to help, and we propose several models to the market. It is either data consortium or individual consulting on transition to IFRS 9. Consortium, it is to minimize cost, leverage of data collected by the consortium itself, and individual projects. We all understand that all this model will be individualized, and on our part, we are working very closely with the whole microfinance sector, and we propose a cloud accounting module for all MFIs. What does it mean? A good, normal accounting system that will enable following all standards that are to be followed by the MFI. Also, I would like to note that for 2 years we have been implementing project FCB Cactus. It is an automated conveyor for the whole credit partnership segment, business processes, accounting system that I addressed before. It also includes integration with 1S accounting system and coordination, all of these things at the level of AKK. And this has been implemented, and credit partnerships have been moving to the system. AKK and AKT provided very good support. So that's all from me. I congratulate everyone. My best wishes for the holiday. Let us move quickly to questions, about 2-3 minutes for each question. Question 1, Nurlan Almasovich. what vision does the regulator have? All MFIs are interested in this. So what is the vision of the regulator in terms of proportionate regulation, and what should be expected in the near future?
This is a burning and kind of expected question. Now, definitely, I'd like to say that over the past period that we started working with the market, our agency, since 2020, it was intense, it was difficult, and there were many changes in that. My colleague said that the pandemic and all the other changes really transformed the business. Standard schemes are going away, and more customer-oriented things are starting. The understanding of business overall is changing, and all of these changes have impacted the regulatory policy of the agency. There have been many changes implemented, and the question arose of what's next? What are we going to live with next year? Now, the first thing I'd like to note is the decisions made by the regulator, and this is already a practice that we've shaped with the market, with the debt collector organizations. They're also regulated now. We have a practice now that first we do a discussion, and then internal discussion, and then we make a decision. And we understand the success of these decisions depends on how much the conditions were taken into account. We know that every decision has two sides, and the right decision is a compromise between the two. And second, I told the story and you told the story, and we had to level out the field, get rid of all the weeds, kind of, to make it really simple. And that work over the 2 years was done. We had 4,500 entities. Out of those, 1,200 remained, 218 MFIs, some pawn shops and credit partnerships remained. So we've cleaned up the market, and we've ensured confidence for the customers. So now customers that go to MFIs, they can get the services of these organizations without worry, and we did that. Also, we took some measures on restricting online loans, and we did some work on that. We identified the measures to protect, so it's either two-factor authentication or biometrics, and we're still in discussion on how to fully solve that issue. And there were many regulatory changes. And what's going to happen next, I've already announced, and in the first half of today, the professional regulation is a novelty. I'm not going to go into the details. I'm just going to say that we have requirements, as you know, regulatory requirements, prudential. We have a risk management, transparency group of requirements. There's business management requirements, and there are requirements to reducing the debt burden and protecting the consumer rights. So for all of these areas, we're going to try to see to which extent these requirements are necessary and how harsh of a requirement we can apply to these entities, the pawn shops, the MFIs, in the credit partnerships. So we're going to optimize that. Thank you, Nurlan. Now, Mr. Holger, what, in your opinion, would be interesting for MFIs in Kazakhstan, considering EBRD's experience in other countries? What we see in other countries, in neighboring countries, and even in Northern Africa, is that digitization is ongoing, especially in the past 2 years. Everybody's already used to getting their services digitally. They expect that from any financial institution, not just the bank, but MFIs as well. And I think digitization of these institutions is needed for them to satisfy their customers in the future. That's in terms of convenience and access. And access should be quick. The decision should be made quick. And Ruslan just mentioned that the scoring processes, the approaches need to be improved in that regard, because the customer expects that. They also expect not only financial services from a financial institution and an MFI, they also expect non-financial services. And we've, for instance, with the program Women in Micro Business, where we cooperate with our partners to ensure such products. And not really a product, but mostly a solution for the client, because they want to know how to correctly use the funds they receive. They want to know whether the money that they acquire, it's being calculated, and I can make a decision on informed decision on how I choose my counterparty and in which investment project I'm investing, and which MFIs should I go to acquire these funds. And it's important, of course, that there are different groups. We've heard about agriculture, we've heard about inclusivity, which is women entrepreneurs, and they expect special products, mentoring, coaching, and networking. And we're, of course, seeing that the train is going towards digitization. If we're not able to co-brand our own financial products and services together with digital solutions, with training, with for mentorship, then I think we will lose on the market if we're not able to do that. Thank you very much, Holger. So we're running out of time, unfortunately. So last question, let's address to Almira Sagatova. The question is about today's discussion and the speech of the President, the message on the need to expand MFIs. And to finish our discussion with your reply, what challenges and opportunities do you see in the expanding of the capacity of MFIs and credit partnerships in lending to rural population? Let's start with the challenges. That specific characteristic of credit partnerships, that they're territorial and not unified, is their weakness in a way, because they can't in time react to the digitization of processes. They're kind of falling behind that level that banks have and advanced MFIs have, because they're low capitalization. And another challenge is just the way they are shaped as like a limited liability partnership. So if tomorrow their capacity would grow and we have enough funding sources to accept all of the participants who want to participate in a partnership, then this will be a problem with re-registering the credit partnership if you have more or less participants. And if in your credit partnership a certain person passes away, then there's the 6 months that you have to wait, and so that can halter development. And in terms of opportunities, I've already mentioned these. This is the successful experience of financing, and that is availability and accessibility all over Kazakhstan. Thank you, Almira. Now, dear guests and participants, speakers, I suggest we finish our panel session, and during a conclusion I'd like to say that the microfinance sector is growing. We are witnesses of a new stage in the development of MFIs and credit partnerships and other participants. We are financial organizations by default, and I'd like this main sort of social orientedness that we have, the achievement of socially significant functions would dominate in our activity. We need to remember that microfinancing is a development of entrepreneurship. It helps fight poverty. And it's that model of microfinancing which is used across the world. And we have to use the international best practices, implement them, work more actively with international finance institutions. And so we believe that the microfinance sector does have a great potential, and we hope that the regulator will continue to render such assistance to develop the microfinancial sector. Thank you for this meeting today, for your opinions. Congratulations, everyone, once again, and good health to you. Thank you very much.